Thank you so much to Clip Studio Paint for sponsoring today's video. Honestly, this is one of the best art programs that I've ever used in my entire life, and I recommend trying it out. Hey, it's me, your favorite artist that you're obviously subscribed to, and welcome back to the posing video. This tutorial is going to cover tips and tricks behind drawing interesting poses, and just so you know, it's not going to cover anatomy and proportions because it's not really related to the topic of the video. Yeah, it has stuff to do with bodies, but you can have good posing without good anatomy, and you can have good anatomy without good posing. Poses are one of the most important aspects of a character because posing creates characteristics and personality upon glance without the character having to speak or move. Creating stiff and lifeless posing is going to make your art look dull, boring, and dead. So how do you go about creating an interesting pose? Before we get into the techniques, I kind of want to establish a common mistake I see many beginners do. Many beginners love to skip over the sketch guideline step and go straight into drawing the final form. We've all been there. Creating guidelines takes too much time, and I'd rather get straight to drawing the body. Professionals may be able to get away with this, but beginners really lack the vision and experience to skip the step. Take your time into fully sketching out your idea. Creating guidelines help you establish a better fluidity with your drawing. When you skip them, you're focusing too much on your body proportions and you're constantly resizing everything, and it's just a mess. In the end, your pose may look too stiff because you've completely forgot to include many of the attributes that I'm going to get into soon. I'm going to show you some examples of my previous art that kind of shows you what happens when you skip the guideline step. So here's a previous drawing that I did like 2 years ago, and you can obviously tell that I didn't plan out my posing before actually drawing it. I just went into the final product instead of working on it. You can tell because the posing's kind of boring. You can see I didn't know what to do with the arm, so I just put them behind the body like every beginner artist does. These two lines are parallel, and I'm going to explain to you why that's bad, and the line of action is completely straight as well, which I'm also going to get into. Here's another drawing, line of action completely straight, and these two lines are completely parallel to each other as well. And I'm going to explain to you why that is bad in a second. So I want to explain what the line of action is. The line of action is a curved line that establishes more movement and fluidity in your pose. They're really important in creating flow in your art, and the way you use them can really help in creating personality. So as you can see, my drawing here, the line of action follows this movement, and the reason I used this line was because it propels her body forward, which kind of like puffs out her chest. I know that seems weird. It puffs out her chest because it shows that she's like a really happy, confident being, and you can see in her face that she is very happy. So I have another example here. As you can see, the line of action, while it's not really anything too special, still is curved. And the reason it's not too curved is because she is standing up, and like I want to make her seem like she's standing up tall, but if you did a straight line, then it wouldn't look anywhere really as good. So while like making it curved makes it seem like she's like puffing her chest out like the other one, but she's not doing it to an extreme extent. I want her to look like she's standing up tall so it can show like she's a strong woman. Alright, so how do we do this? Alright, for an example, let's draw a hunched over line. Now, what can we create with this line? Well, what we can create is a shy, scared, timid person that is kind of scared around people. Now, how did I get that? Well, shy people usually tend to look at the ground more often because they don't like really making eye contact with other people. So what we can do is we can create a head that is kind of angling downward. Or more downward. All right, like that, okay? And now with the line of action, since we have it, what we can do is we can create the upper and lower torso. So kind of think of it as your spine. Now, we don't have to completely be on the line of action. The only thing that's important is following its curvature. So I don't have to be on it, but I just have to follow its curvature. So what we're going to do here is create the upper torso, and now we're going to create the lower torso. So as you can see now, I kind of have like a hunched over human being, and you can see it's following the curvature of the line, but it doesn't have to be completely on it. It's just more of an idea instead of having to be part of the actual person. What about the ligaments? Do they have to follow the line of action? Well, usually they don't have to, because you're not going to have arms that go like this. Then your art's going to be kind of weird. Now with the arms, you don't really have to follow it. You can make it do their own thing. So I would kind of consider the line of action to kind of be the spine of the drawing. So with these arms, what I'm going to do is make them do the finger touchy thing, if you know what I'm talking about. So like the thing where people usually like touch their index fingers to indicate that they're shy. So that's what I'm gonna do right here. And for the legs, I'm gonna make them hunched over, or like kind of like bent a little, so it can kind of show that they're kind of kneeling, if you want to call it that way. So see, interesting pose. Now with this kind of idea of my pose, what I can do now is very quickly go over the drawing. And you can see here that I now have my character. And you can see the posing is very like natural. It feels natural to the character and it doesn't feel any stiff. Like it gives her personality. If you looked at her like this character and told me like what is her personality, you can tell that she's very shy, timid, and she doesn't really like to talk to a lot of people. So now that we learned about the line of action, what else should we learn about? Well, as symmetrical as we humans are built, I could not say really the same about our posing. Us humans sit down, stand up, run in all kinds of forms, and our shoulders and waist are constantly twisting, turning, leaning. So why don't we take that into consideration? Creating two lines that represent our shoulders and torsos and angling them different from each other can create asymmetrical posing, which leads to much more like life and humanity within our characters. As a human, we're constantly moving our arms up and down, and our shoulders will rarely be even with each other. The same goes for our waist. It is very very unhuman-like for both of these parts of our body to be equal with each other. So let's imagine we had imaginary lines going through our shoulders and waist. If you ever really monitor yourself moving, you will find out that these two lines are never really parallel with each other, and we can apply this to our art, and soon we can create asymmetric posing that follows the same rule. So how would we use this in a drawing? Well, let's say you have a front-facing character. Okay, so here's our head, and we have a front-facing character. And you kind of want their body positioning to be like protruding forward, but you can't really do that since the line of action is just going to be a straight line if you're trying to make them protrude forward. And you don't really want them leaning too much to the left or right. What we can do is create two parallel lines. I'm going to do it the other way. To create two parallel lines that kind of represent our shoulders and our hips, okay? And then what we can do from here is we can make the body kind of follow these two lines. And now what we do here is we can kind of put her hand to her hip, and we can put the other line down, and it kind of makes it look like she's like sassy, you know? So that's kind of an example of like what you can do with like asymmetric lines. So I wanted to show one last example of the line of action and uneven lines being at play. So I'm going to be doing a voiceover of a speed sketch I made for this tutorial because I really can't talk while focusing on drawing. So as you can see, I start creating my line of action and my two uneven lines and a circle that represents my head. And based off of these simple shapes, I'm going to be making more complex shapes that represent my head, my upper torso, and my lower torso. And from here, I'm going to be creating other shapes that represent my arms, legs, you get the point. And so the good thing about guidelines is that you're able to readjust them without affecting or making the sketch look ugly, because in reality, your guidelines do not affect what your final product look like. Like readjusting them, all that doesn't really matter. Because let's say you had an actual sketch, okay? You have all your characters' facial features and their clothing. Once you need to resize something, you're typically going to have it all on the same layer. So when you lasso tool it, you're going to be affecting the clothing, the clothing as well as like, you know, other specific things, and you're going to have to redraw it. So this is the good thing about guidelines, is that you're able to edit them as you please, because they're only supposed to like represent your idea, and sometimes you're also going to trace over them for the main sketch. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm using my guidelines as a trace over for my main sketch. Well, anyways, back to posing. As you can see, the uneven lines and the line of action actually do play a significant role in like how your posing is gonna look and stuff. So like one tip that I really want to tell you is never to skip the guideline sketch, because it can really help with focusing on the idea of your drawing. So that's all I have for you today. I really hoped I helped you in some way on this video, and I recommend looking up other tutorials that go more into depth than mine. Mine are only like an introduction of a certain subject, you know? So if you like this video, I hope you subscribe. We're almost at 100K, and that's actually amazing. So once again, thank you to Clip Studio Paint for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.